Hey folks, welcome to the Do-It-Yourself-Dad channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to repair some small holes in drywall. I'm going to be showing you how to do it the right way, and I'm going to give you a few tricks that'll make your job a little bit easier. Now in our case, we have two good-sized holes that were caused by these drywall anchors pulling out of this drunken octopus. And we're going to fill those holes with some compound, but before we do that, you're going to want to either take a blade or something like this and knock down anything that's protruding up. Here we have a little bit of stuff here that's coming out of the hole, and you want to clean that off because that will protrude up through your patch. So we're going to go in here with a razor blade and knock that stuff out, and some of it we can actually knock into the hole. You just want to make sure it's flush so you don't have any high points later on. With that done, now we're going to come in with, I like to use this stuff, it's Drywall spackling compound, and the reason I like this stuff is because it goes on pink and dries white. So that way you know when it's completely dry and safe to sand. We're going to be using this and a blade here like this to apply it. Now on larger holes like this, it's very important to actually get compound into the hole itself. So we're going to come in here and actually just use our fingers first and actually press some compound down into the hole. Because otherwise what will happen is you'll have a very thin layer sitting on top, but you won't have anything behind it holding it in place. So we're going to kind of run some down into the hole there real good so we get some material in there. And with that now in there, now we're going to take our little spackling knife here and apply it. Same thing applies. You want to really press it in there and then pull away with the knife. Any excess you can scrape off. I would avoid scraping it back into the can just because you could have some contamination in there from the drywall coming loose. And now we've got our first part of the patch on. Now here's our first trick here. Now a lot of people will just leave it like this and figure they'll clean that up later with sandpaper, but you don't have to while it's still wet. You can just take some wet paper towel or even a sponge and get in here and clean off any of the excess. You just want to make sure that you don't leave any ridges while you're doing that. So now that we've got that excess scraped off, we're just going to wait for this to turn white and then we can continue the process. So now that our patch has turned from pink to white, we can inspect it and see. Sometimes you'll see a little bit where it pulls in a little right around that edge. We're not going to worry about that because we've got so much texture here. But if you have anything high up, you want to take a block of sandpaper and come in here and lightly sand it. Now I don't have too much, but I want to take some of the lines off and we're good. Now the next big trick I have is using a sponge. Now you notice your wall is going to have texture to it. And a lot of people will use a spray. Sometimes you get them in cans and you can shoot texture on it. The problem is you kind of get it everywhere, and once it's on, but you can get that same texture with a sponge. And the easiest way to do that is come back in here with your scraper. We're going to scrape a very thin, we'll call it like a skim coat, over that again. Add a little bit more right there in the middle. A little bit of material on there to work with. Now we take our sponge and we start dabbing. And depending upon what kind of texture you have, you can get a pretty good mimic here. You just work it around until your texture looks about right. And our texture looks pretty much perfect. We're just going to wait for that to dry again, and then we can hit this with paint. And now that our texture is dry, we can come into some paint and paint over the affected area. Now, if once it's dry, you realize that your texture is still not quite right, maybe it's a little bit too high with that sponge, you can knock the texture down with a sponge. Now it looks a little bit off because right now the paint is wet, but once the paint is dried, this will blend right in. Now I'm fortunate that I have a can of the paint that I painted this entire wall with. If you don't, you may actually have to paint the entire wall or a patch of the wall so you don't have an obvious mark where this is. And that's all there is to it. Now you can pick up everything that I used today at your local hardware store and you can get paint matched to your wall there as well. If this video did help you out, give it a great big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button because I always have useful content like this coming your way. And leave me a comment if there's something else around the house that you're working on that you might want a little bit of help with. I might make a video just for you. And of course, thanks for watching.